Okay, there we go. I had to turn my voice up a little bit more. Hold on 1 second. Let me get right. Let me get sorted out here. This, ladies and gentlemen, is why people have producers and all that type of stuff. So yeah, give me a second here. Let me get sorted. And if I sound too low, let me know, and I can make some adjustments there. So I'm listening in my ear, and that sounds pretty crisp and loud in my ear, but let me see, let me catch up with y'all in the comments here. All right, you said no sound? So there's no ones in the chat indicating there is no sound. So no volume. Is that what we got going on here? All right, hold on. So it can't be that. Bear with me a second. Put a 1 in the chat if you can hear me clearly. Okay, I say good sound. Sound is low. All right, hold on. Let's see. I'll bring that up. That's not it. Because I want to sound a little bit louder to you guys. So give me a second here, let me sort it out. It keeps changing every time I start it up. So it's this thing where I still gotta work on some kinks with things. But tonight, this is gonna be a good one. It's gonna be a very important conversation that I'll be having here. So just bear with me. You see, a little low, okay. Okay, so I feel like my mic is a little low. So I'm trying to figure out how to turn that up. So just give me a second here, because I feel like my mic should be louder. So I'm just setting that out. If my mic is a little bit low, because that's the thing I'm really trying to adjust. There we go. Now my mic is louder. Okay. There we go. Looking for the knobs. Got all of these knobs, man. All right. Okay, so now my sound is loud. Now y'all can hear me loud and clear, right? Am I a little bit too loud? You want me to turn my sound down a little bit? Let me know if I'm too loud. Sounds good now. There we go, okay. So I think I finally figured it. We can move on. All right. So tonight, what do I got to start off with? We got to talk about. Oh, what? What says no? Well, you said no? What are you saying no to? Miss D, what are you saying no to? Let me know. You said, how did that happen? It was smoothly, then just disappeared? What just disappeared? Okay. All right, look at that. Y'all putting me on a roller coaster of emotions. I'm telling you, that's why people get like a producer, some kind of audio technician or something. So tonight, basically, I'm talking about 2 things tonight. I'm talking about building the infrastructure of your body, particularly skeletal muscle tissue and bones and connective tissue. Right? Talking about these things in particular and explaining arthritis, osteoporosis, osteoarthritis, sarcopenia, and training to build muscle in general. All right. I've talked about these things in the past, but I want to retouch on them, right? Because I'm going to tie them into arthritis and things like that as well. And I'm also going to touch a little bit on cholesterol, okay? Because there is some nuance about that too, with some things that I got to clear up, okay? Let me monitor myself one more time before I get started. There we go. Okay, so everything sounds good. All right, so let's get started. By the way, before I get started, let me give a shout out to folks in the chat here. So Miss D, big shout out to you. I see you in here. Miss D tuning in from Raleigh. That's right. Serenity, what's going on? Big shout out to you. All right. Hello, my name is Venus, and I just wanted to say I love the content you put out there for others. Thank you. Appreciate that. Absolutely. All right. Tuning in from Southern Utah. There we go. My man, Jay Short. What's going on? Good to see you, Mr. Jay Short. Definitely hit me up in the Discord. Let me know how you're doing. And there's been quite a bit of updates on the platform, on the Tribe by Noir platform. So I have updated the Tribe Solid and Tribe Flex training plans, and the High Raw Vegan Nutrition Guide as well. And added in a lot of dope features. I am actually streaming live on the Tribe by Noir platform right now. So the Monday night lives will also be for Tribe by Noir members as well, right? So basically I'm streaming twice a week right now. I will be resuming weekly streams. So the Monday and the Thursday night live streams will be every week as opposed to every other week. So I can kind of scale things up a little bit more and talk to you guys more frequently. All right, so there's an update there. So definitely I'm free to stream more often with y'all. All right. We got Miss Nicole Rache. What's going on? Good to see you in here. All right, Denise, we got, I know I'm not gonna say this right. Is that C-O Shay? Is that how you say it? C-O, C-O? I feel like the X is silent. We got Denise tuning in. That's right, folks, let me know. All right. We got Annie, Miss Annie Thompson. What's going on? Good to see you in here. All right. Oh, hold on. Vegan activist from Argentina. What's going on? Big shout out to you. More Control 500. I love it. Yeah, back in my early days going vegan, I did vegan activism when I was living out in Georgia. I was out there with Anonymous for the Voiceless. I was doing the outreach, actually, having the conversations with folks out in the street. So that was my get down there. Let's see. All right, Kenya, what's going on? Big shout out to you tuning in from Texas. There we go. All right. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. There is one primary thing that builds muscle, and that is the adaptation to facilitate whatever you're doing consistently. So elaborating on that, right? The primary reason of why your body develops muscle is to protect against threats. When you engage in exercise or any kind of activity that fatigues or weakens your body, puts your body in a fatigued state physiologically, your body will reinforce the tissues or the infrastructure around those areas, right? So it'll make them thicker and stronger, okay? Hold on one second. Let me make another minor adjustment here. Okay. So yeah, basically, if I train a muscle, let's say I'm doing like a pull downs, lat pull downs, or pull ups, or rows, some type of back exercise. The more I challenge the muscle, the more fatigued the muscle gets, and my body will register that fatigue as a threat to my survival. If I keep doing that, every time I do it, my body is going to respond to that activity by reinforcing those muscles, the connective tissue, which is the ligaments, the tendons, the bone, the skeletal muscle tissue, everything, right? It will improve it metabolically, physiologically, all that, right? Not just the muscle, but also the bones, ligaments, and tendons as well, okay? Now, if I can consistently engage in working that muscle year after year after year in a disciplined, consistent fashion, and I provide enough adequate recovery from that activity, I can continuously build that muscle and the connective tissue and bones around it progressively every single year in this upward trend, right? Now, of course, the stronger and larger that muscle gets and those ligaments and tendons and bones get, the less growth you get, right? The closer you get to your genetic ceiling, the growth starts to slow down, but you still get that growth. The reason why I wanted to touch on this is because you have people like where they say, well, you know, you're supposed to do a rep range in between 5 and 10 reps, and then some people say 6 and 12 reps, and then some people say 8 to 12 reps, and then, you know, all this, people have these rep range suggestions, 12 to 20, 16 to 20, etc. The rep range is not really particularly relevant, right? It doesn't matter if you do 5 reps, 10 reps, 20, or 30 reps. It doesn't really particularly matter. The muscle, the bone, and all the connective tissues and everything will improve. It doesn't really matter what the rep scheme is. The only relevance the rep scheme has is when you start getting certain adaptations, meaning the longer the set takes. So let's say if I do bicep curls and I'm doing a set of 50 reps, this is going to train more of my aerobic capacity as far as working that muscle, right? So it has different metabolic implications. So if I do 30 reps, only like the last maybe like 10 reps will count, okay? So the 20 reps before that, it's not really going to provide much of a muscular stimulus because it's not enough of a stimulus to register as a threat, right? That's not an argument against doing 30 reps. It's just going to take you longer to get to the result you want. And basically what you want to do is you want to train the muscle as hard as possible in the shortest amount of time, right? Now, if the set is really short, that means that you have to really maximize muscle fiber activation and stimulus within those reps. So if it's 5 reps, you only really get 5 contractions in order to use those muscle fibers, in order for your body to recruit those muscle fibers for that movement. Okay? So if it's only going to be 5 reps, well then the load has to be significant. Right? Now, you can do that. It just depends on how much training experience you have and what mode of training you're engaged in. So it's a bit more technical, right? But when you have less reps, if you're going to reach a max effort in like 5 reps, you're going to be using a really, really heavy weight or really, really strong resistance. Okay? Now, if you do that, you're at more of a risk. Okay? Risk of injury is one of those things that you really have to factor in to your journey in building muscle. Because the more risk you take, the more of a likelihood you can get injured. And if you get injured, well, that's going to stall out your progress because then you're not really going to be able to create that training stimulus because of the injury. It's going to inhibit your ability to do that. You're not going to be able to train if you get injured, right? So You have 30 reps, which is like the safest because 30 reps is like a really long runway. So imagine like you're flying an airplane. And when you land, you can land on a really short landing strip, or you can land on a really long landing strip with a long runway. Right? So like 5 reps is like a short landing strip. It's like a short runway. 30 reps is a long runway, right? So you can visualize it in that way to determine, risk reduction. Now I'm using 30 reps because that's a really high example. I think 30 reps is like a really, really long runway to the point where you've already landed, you've already smoothed out. You don't really have to go the whole entire way. You maybe don't need a 30 rep runway. Maybe like 16, 20 reps is fine, right? My sweet spot tends to be somewhere around 10 to 20. That's generally where I fall for the most part, but it depends on the type of training you're doing, right? And I'm gonna get into that, right? Because I have specific rep ranges that I target. Now, for people who have been following me for long enough, you know that I primarily train with body weight and resistance bands. Since I've been training with resistance bands, and I've been training with resistance bands for quite a few years now, right? And I don't really have a desire to go and join a gym and work with conventional weights and all of that type of stuff because I've been getting phenomenal gains in progress. My joints are much better. My mobility is better. I got no joint pain, no injuries, no shoulder impingements, no nothing, and still been able to gain. So what the resistance bands have allowed me to do is be able to train unimpeded by potential injuries or nagging overuse injuries and things like this, right? So I'm like a big proponent of training with resistance bands. So when you listen to bodybuilding podcasts, you may hear things that are very different from the things that I say. So for example, you may hear like you watch a bodybuilding podcast and they say, when you do more training volume, meaning more sets, right? More reps and more sets, that equals more muscle growth. And then you hear me and I'm like, you really only need like 1, maybe 3 sets per exercise, but usually 1 set is enough. So I'm like in the opposite direction of what they say. And so you may look at me and say, well, you train like that and you're able to build the muscle that you've built training with just 1 set per exercise? And I'm like, yes, right? So we're looking at like 1 workout that I do is like, it can be anywhere from like 5 to 10 sets of training volume, 15 sets at the most for the whole entire workout. Right? And then it can be like 3 or 5 sets per muscle growth. Like I train with really low training volume. I don't train high training volume. I really don't. And I usually just train like about maybe 2 or 3 times a week. Now, if you create a controlled environment with fairly young people in somewhat athletic condition, either with maybe like a year of experience or less than a year of experience or whatever, and you run them through a study where they do high training volume, will they gain more muscle as they increase their training volume? Yes. However, the longer they do that, the less effective it becomes. Right? But then also when they talk about sets and reps, well, what's the intensity? So in my education and my experience with strength and conditioning and performance and things like this, there's something called RPE, which is rate of perceived exertion, right? Or RIR, reps in reserve, right? So a lot of powerlifting training programs or, power building training programs, your sets are done on like this RPE scale, and RPE is typically in between like a 6 and an 8.5. You only reach like an all-out max effort of like a 10 RPE on like your last week of that training program that you're running, right? So if you're doing, let's say set one, you do 5 reps, but you're using a weight that you can get 14 reps with. You're not getting a growth stimulus out of that, okay? So now let's say you do 5 sets. The first set is at like an RPE of like 4, very minimal challenge. Set 2, maybe it's like a 5 or a 6, very minimal challenge. Set 3, now you get to like a 7, 7.5. Okay, now we're starting to get somewhere. That's more of a training, it's more of a challenge. Set 4, you're around, maybe an 8, and then set 5, you're maybe at like an 8.5, 9, right? The only set that really provided a growth stimulus out of the 5 sets is like the last 1 or 2 sets. Well, if you're like me and you have responsibilities, you're busy, you don't want to be spending all this time training, and your goal is to build muscle, why do the 5 sets and only like the last 1 or 2 count to actually create a growth stimulus, right? So, and then also, if you do, let's say you do 3 sets and 5 sets for each exercise, giving you a total training volume of 15 sets, but out of those 15 sets, only like maybe 3 to 5 of them were really challenging you enough to create a growth stimulus, well, then your effective training volume is 3 to 5 sets. It's not 15. So it begs the question, why do all 15? Right? So that's the thing that you have to factor in. Then you also have to factor in metabolic health and recovery, right? So basically, you have to factor in metabolic health. Metabolic health is essentially how well does your body take, let's say, carbohydrates, convert it into glucose, and then shuttle that glucose into the cells in order to power the training and the recovery. How effective is your body at leveraging oxygen and glucose and things like that in order to facilitate training performance, good sleep quality, recovery, and things like that? If your metabolic health is poor, then your capacity to build muscle is going to be a lot more limited. So if you have a low capacity to build muscle, but then you're doing high training volume, you think it's going to work in your favor? The answer is no. Because your training volume is exceeding your body's ability to recover. You don't grow from what you can't recover from. So going back to effective training volume, that's the thing that really matters. I don't really care about total training volume. It's not really relevant. It's effective training volume. So effective training volume is the training volume that gets registered as a threat to your survival, okay? That's the thing that really matters. That's the effective training volume, that all-out effort. So with a resistance band, okay? If I do squats with a resistance band, let's say I do squats with a resistance band, and I'm doing as many reps as possible within that 1 set. And let's say I make it to 10 reps. And then 11 is a real grind, and then 12 is a real grind. And then 13, I'm not really able to stand up all the way. So now what happens if I squat down to the bottom and I stand up maybe a third of the way for the 13th, 14th, and 15th rep? And then the 16th rep, I can stand up like halfway. Now they're like pulsing squats. I can squeeze out like 17 reps. The only difference is the last few reps are going to be like partial reps because the muscle is so fatigued, I can't even stand all the way up. That's an all-out set, right? That's extremely hard to do, and it's very mentally taxing, which is why you just do 1 set if you're going to do that, because you can't do that more than 1 set. This is what I'm talking about. So when I say 1 set, my idea of 1 set is very different than other people's idea of 1 set. I'm talking about like really pushing the margins. You're trying to get as much stimulus out of that one set as possible, right? Now, the interesting thing is, let's use a less extreme, and the thing is, the reason why I use squats is because you can't do that really with a barbell. Because if you get stapled under the weight and you have this weight sitting on your back or something like that, compressing your spine, it's going to significantly increase your risk of injury. With resistance bands, that don't really happen, right? Because with a resistance band, all of the tension is maximized at the top of the rep, not the bottom. So so in the bottom of the set, you don't have a whole lot of resistance acting on you. So it's a safe position. And if you can't stand back up, you can just drop the resistance band, right? So it's a safety mechanism. It's kind of inherently built into doing those squats with a resistance band. Same thing with like a bicep curl, right? I'm doing a bicep curl and I'm curling all the way up, boom, bicep curl, curling all the way up. And then I'm doing partials because I can't curl all the way. So I'm getting like halfway, right? Now I'm doing bicep curls and I'm only getting like, 35% of a rep, 35% range of motion. Even though they're partial reps, I'm training the muscle in a lengthened state. And when you train a muscle in a lengthened state, the lengthening of the muscle is where the biggest threat is, because a muscle is most vulnerable in its lengthened state. A muscle is weakest in its lengthened state. That is one of the primary things, if not the primary thing, that gets registered as a threat, and your body hyper responds to that. So there's been scientific studies that show that training a muscle in a lengthened state, lengthening the muscle as much as possible, actually yields more muscle growth than actually focusing on peak contractions, shortening of the muscle, right? So studies like this reinforce what I've been saying all this time, right? It's all about what gets registered by your body as a threat, right? Your parasympathetic nervous system is a very powerful thing. I'll give you an example. If you have tight hamstrings because your hamstrings are weak, your nervous system will prevent the muscle fibers from stretching past a certain point of comfort, because the lengthening is a vulnerable position. And if the hamstring is weak, then your nervous system will limit the muscle's ability to lengthen in order to avoid a tear in the muscle, in order to avoid injury, right? If you want to lengthen a muscle, you have to train that muscle in that lengthened state. So what happens is your nervous system registers the lengthening, that challenge from the lengthening, and then your body will then adapt to training that muscle in a lengthened state. And as that adaptation happens, your body will facilitate your ability to lengthen those muscle fibers. This is how you develop flexibility, right? If you stretch a muscle, the muscle will contract, right? So it's not the muscle's tight because it's contracting. So if it's contracting while you're lengthening it, you're engaged in a sort of muscle building exercise. It is really an exercise, okay? So that's like an example of that. So there's all of these different mechanisms where when I say there's only one driver of muscle growth, it's not sets. There's not a magical number like 10 reps or 20 reps or 30 reps. There's not a magical number of sets like 5 sets, 10 sets, 15 sets, or even 20 sets. It's not that. The only thing that matters is creating enough of a stimulus and doing it consistently enough to trigger a growth response, and then facilitating recovery as much as possible in order to facilitate the growth process. Because you can trigger a growth stimulus, but if you interrupt it and you inhibit the recovery, you won't grow. And then all you do is you just increase your risk of injury because you never really fully recover. The growth is in the recovery. The training is only used to stimulate the growth response. Then you have to let the growth play out, right? I might answer y'all questions in a bit too. I see you got some questions here. So this is why I say you only really need one set. Now, when you say, well, how is it that, let's say, power lifters, they train with higher sets, 5, 10 sets, things like that. Powerlifting is a skill. The only reason for doing more sets is because you're practicing a movement pattern. The point of doing more sets while not pursuing like a maximum effort on each set is because you're trying to practice a movement. So if I get a weight that is like a 5 RPE and I'm doing back squats or bench press or whatever, and I'm doing a really controlled eccentric movement, I'm explosive throughout the concentric movement and all of that, and I'm breathing and bracing and tightening up, I'm practicing a skill. I'm practicing a movement pattern. And I'm refining the movement pattern, right? And the reason why is because the more you refine your movement pattern, that facilitates muscle recruitment by optimizing your motor coordination and movement and all of that. Right? If you have really poor movement ability, your ability to recruit muscle fibers is going to be very limited because anatomically your movement is just very sloppy, right? So it's that. So it's a skill building thing. Power lifters don't train to build muscle. Power lifters train in order to get stronger in particular movements in order to lift as much weight as possible. It has nothing to do with it. It's not about muscle building. Muscle building is incidental to powerlifting. The muscle building is not the goal. So if your goal is just building muscle, well, you don't really need to follow a powerlifting program because it's not your goal. Powerlifters train to get stronger in the deadlift, squat, the bench press. That's it. The muscle growth is only used to facilitate the strength performance in the movements. That's it. So calisthenics, same thing. People say, well, I want to build muscle, so I've been doing calisthenics, bodyweight exercises. Now, you can build muscle doing calisthenics, but there's a learning curve. So for example, doing pull-ups. You got to practice a dead hang, lat activation, posture, and all this type of stuff. So there's a bit of a learning curve. If you're trying to build your lats and your trapezius and all of that type of stuff, I would rather you do rows and lat pull downs with a resistance band before you start doing pull-ups. Because if you get on the bar, you do pull-ups and your form, it's just like you're doing all of this, the shoulders are flying up, you're all kyphotic pulling, the elbows are all tucked in. All you're gonna do is just end up wearing out your shoulders and getting an injury, right? So it would make more sense to move freely with the resistance band. Resistance bands are really good for focusing on contracting and firing certain muscles, right? Because with resistance bands, the peak resistance is when the muscle is in its shortest position, right? So if I'm doing a lat pull down with a resistance band, the resistance increases the more my elbow gets to my midline. So I can really pull and really contract that muscle fiber and then slowly release and then pull in and contract hard. And I can really work it, boom, and I can really retract it. And with each rep, I recruit more and more and more muscle fibers, and I can really isolate that muscle to build that muscle in particular in a targeted fashion. And I can do it while reducing my risk of injury as much as possible, right? Now, before I move on, let me catch up with y'all in the comments here. Ali says, is it hard to get visible abs and lean out just with bands and calisthenic exercises versus weightlifting? So yeah, so basically, as far as the visible abs thing, this implies metabolic health and what your diet and the type of results your diet is producing, right? Whether you're weightlifting or just working with resistance bands and body weight, regardless of which one you're doing, the purpose of that kind of training is not to burn body fat. Resistance training isn't really like a fat burning thing. The fat burning is incidental, and the fat burning only really happens when you stop. Resistance training is anaerobic, meaning there's a shortage of oxygen, so there's an over or a primary reliance on glucose, basically using sugar for energy. In order to use fat for energy, you would have to stop, let your heart rate and whatnot come down, increase your oxygen storage inside your body, lower your heart rate and all of that. And then your body will then begin to break down fat and convert that into glucose to then reload glycogen inside your cells. Right? So the resistance training is not like a fat burning exercise, or it's not a fat burning workout. The fat burn only happens when you stop. The resistance training specifically is to build your ligaments, tendons, muscle, and bones. That's it. Right? Your diet is to fuel your body, provide it with the necessary amino acids, vitamins, and minerals and antioxidants needed in order to facilitate peak hormonal function, metabolic health, recovery, etc. Right? And then if you want to burn body fat, well, you can burn body fat primarily through some degree of fasting. Right? So the resistance training is to build muscle, the eating is to fuel the recovery and the maintenance of your body's infrastructure, and then the fasting is for fat burn. Right? That's essentially how that works. If you're trying to work out and do resistance training in order to maximize fat burn, it's going to be a hard road. Because if you got a lot of fat to lose, that means that you got to do a lot more resistance training. But the problem is that you can only recover from so much training. So there's a big limitation there. You run into recovery issues. There is a hierarchy. So skeletal muscle can recover really quickly. Your nervous system, not so much. Your nervous system takes a lot longer to recover, right? And your nervous system, if your nervous system doesn't recover, that inhibits everything else. So I'm a really big fan of like rest days and infrequent training because of that. If you want peak blood flow, really strong muscular contractions, really good mental health and sleep quality, taking days off is absolutely essential, right? So there's 7 days in a week, you can train for like 2 or 3 of them, maybe 4. You got to really maximize your recovery on the days that you don't train. So if you concentrate large amounts of strong, powerful, intense training into like 60 to 90 minutes a week, split between like 3 days, and you take the rest of the week to facilitate recovery and self-care, that's the way that you get sustainable gains consistently. This isn't a shortcut. Like if you're like, well, I want to get jacked and huge, you may not want to listen to somebody like me, right? Because I'm all about sustainability and having a long vision. There are no shortcuts. You can gain muscle really quickly and do really intense training, but the thing is that it's going to be very short-lived. So you can train 6 days a week and have high training volume and all of this type of stuff, and you can get really impressive gains, but that's only in the short term. If you run that style of training for too long, you will lose. You will start to get sick of training, your motivation will fall into the drain and get flushed down the toilet. You just start falling off on your diet and all this type of stuff, and people fall off the rails. It's not sustainable, right? So I'm more of a proponent of more evenly distributed effort and patience. Patience is for the long game, all right? So anyway, so skeletal muscle recovers the quickest, and that's what bodybuilders can train really frequently, because bodybuilders typically don't really train that hard. Bodybuilders usually don't really train that hard, but do pretty significant training volume. So like per exercise, it's like 16 and 20 reps and all of this type of stuff, 16, 20 sets per exercise, right? So it'd be like a chest day, and like You got like a whole 45 minutes to an hour where you're just doing chest exercises. That's freaking nuts, right? But bodybuilders train like that. Just heaps and heaps and heaps of training volume in order to create a growth stimulus to train, you know, that particular muscle. And that's a very effective way of training. It is. But you peak out, you get results really quickly. But of course, a lot of people, what happens is you got to be very, very good about recovery if you're going to do that. So your diet has to be on point, your sleep quality has to be really on point, and you have had to have started with adequate metabolic health if you're going to do that. Right? If you're lacking in the sleep department and you're lacking in the dietary department, and if you have underlying metabolic issues, that's going to make that whole bodybuilding thing very difficult to do because you have a lot of things working against you, which most people have, especially over the age of like 35. If you're like 20, you can do that. You can run it. 6 days a week training, 5 days a week training, body part split, full body training. You can go off. If you're a teenager, 20, 23, 25, you can do that. Once you're like over 30, it's a different ball game. Once you're paying taxes, you're raising kids, you're working long hours at work, you're paying all kind of bills, you got to meet deadlines and all this type of stuff. Now it's a different story. Right? Things get a little bit more nuanced. This is why you'll have the gym loaded up with people going to the gym and most of them are not in shape. Right? And you'll have people struggling to build muscle but eating a ton of protein and doing a lot of training volume and a lot of cardio and just struggling. You can't force your body to really just go through a rapid change like this. It doesn't, you can do that maybe like once or twice in your life. Right? So some people will be like, man, I was in phenomenal shape and it's hard to get back there. It's like, yeah, because you can't keep repeatedly doing that. You can't keep running it like that. It doesn't work. The older you get, the harder it becomes to do that, right? Because of all of the other stressors that happen as a result, right? So there has to be a bit more of a nuanced way of thinking about these things. Now, aside from the recovery of skeletal muscle tissue in your nervous system, if your nervous system is shot, this increases your risk of injury. If your nervous system is not recovered enough, the workouts become harder, the muscle contractions become weaker, and the joint pain starts to increase. You start to feel more aches and pains in your joints as a result of this. You may say, why is that? Now we get more so into the arthritis thing, right? So when people have like arthritis, osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, osteoporosis, bone degenerative disease, things like this, right? Gout. All of these things are related in the fact that they're not really injury-based. They're metabolic disorders. When you stress your nervous system out, what happens is muscle fiber recruitment diminishes. And if muscle fiber recruitment diminishes and muscle fibers start to get dormant, this puts more stress on the connective tissues, ligaments and tendons. Your muscle fibers are like always contracting to one degree or another to hold your body together. It's a lot of stress. Your muscle fibers, skeletal muscles, like very, very metabolically active, right? And when that skeletal muscle tissue gets deactivated, well, the thing that was creating the tension, the hold things together, now starts to fall apart. It's kind of like on a bridge and it has like these bridge cables and whatnot holding everything together. Them bridge cables loosen up, that bridge is going to be in the ocean. That thing going to give way, right? Cars and vans and trucks running back and forth over that thing. It's just a disaster waiting to happen, right? And so what happens is this creeps up on you over a period of years. This was a thing that I learned kind of early on, right? So for me, I had, all throughout my 20s and whatnot, and throughout my lifting career, I was a maniac about lifting. And it was eat to get big, work out like a maniac, really challenge yourself each and every time you step foot in the gym, right? I did gain muscle. I did get strength, right? And I got impressively strong. But as I got stronger and as I gained more muscle, I started to get more joint pain. It was shoulder impingements. It was nerve issues, elbows, wrists, hands, shoulders, my neck, lower back pain, shooting pain up and down, up and down my hamstring, tight IT band, knee issues. It was really getting there, right? Even in my left foot, having massive pain in my left foot and all this type of stuff, in my Achilles heel, plantar fasciitis, all types of stuff. It was really, really building up on me. But this was happening over a period of like years, right? One of the best things I did was optimize my diet and have a carb-rich, water-rich diet, engage in fasting, and reduce my training frequency, and adopt an earlier bedtime. That was a game changer. I put way more of an emphasis on recovery. Just because you feel good enough to train does not necessarily mean you should. So can I train 6 days a week? Yes. Do I need to? No. Right? You really only need about 3 days. And you know what? Some weeks are harder than others. So you may need to just have a training week where you just train 2 days. Right? Or your training schedule is normally like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But you know what? If Thursday hits, you feel real fatigued, and then Friday, you're like, I don't know, I could train, but I'm kind of tired today. Then push it to Saturday. You may need to give yourself that extra day, right? If you feel really fatigued, sure, you may need to take a whole week off. You may need to train every 48 hours. You may need to just train Monday, Thursday, and like Sunday. You may need to really space out your training days, right? Managing recovery and stress is one of the most important things. And the more stressed you are, the more susceptible to joint pain you become. In my experience with coaching people, the people who have the most joint health issues are the people who work the longest hours. And work the longest hours, whether it be on your feet or sitting in a chair, overtime. You're feeling it in your joints, right? Nurses, truck drivers, warehouse workers, these type of things. Especially like when you're working overnight and things like that, those things that cut into your sleep schedule, that's where that joint pain really starts setting in, right? Now, the interesting thing too, right, and this is all metabolic health. This has nothing to do with injuries. Because I was having joint pain, but I wasn't injured. I didn't sprain anything, I didn't tear anything or whatever. It wasn't really an injury, but it was just joint pain. I'm like, my elbows hurt. I had a golfer's elbow and all this type of stuff. Nothing's torn or nothing like that. It's just inflamed. Your nervous system requires an insane amount of glucose, sugar. Your nervous system primarily just runs on sugar for energy. And you need rest, right? Your nervous system is lit up like a Christmas tree all day long, all day, nonstop. And then when you train, you turn it up even more so. And it's just messages and just craziness all day, hormones up and down, bam, 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 just lightning strikes everywhere, all over your body all the time. You throw an intense training stimulus onto that and you keep doing it, bam, 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 and you keep hitting yourself with these hard training stimulus. They're prolonged, they're strong, they're just wearing you out. It's hard for your body to keep up with that. Eventually you kind of, you run out of your ability to sustain that kind of effort mentally and physically. Right? And then if you have digestive issues, if you're insulin resistant and all of this type of stuff, your nervous system gets jammed up, right? So you have to take some of the stimulus off, right? There has to be some type of pressure release. You gotta let this thing cool off. Think of it like overheating, like your nervous system is like overheated, right? So like a lot of the times when people feel like pain in their knees, one of the best things you can do is stretch out your piriformis right? Stretch out your psoas. So like your glute muscles, your hip flexors, you stretch out your quadriceps, your hamstrings, you stretch out your gastrocnemius, your soleus, and all that type of stuff. You stretch out all of those muscles, your adductors and everything. Just stretch it. And it makes it feel better. And you say, well, why does the stretching make it feel better? Remember, when you stretch muscle fibers, that creates muscular contractions. So what happens is muscular contractions, they rush more blood flow to whatever's being contracted. And that creates more muscle fiber recruitment in order to counteract the stretch, because your body will recruit more muscle fibers in order to prevent you from overstretching. So the more you stretch it, your nervous system wakes up and starts to lock it down, right? Now you don't have to stretch like you're trying to tear the muscle straight off the bone. You just kind of just gently ease in and stretch, and mobility, just let the blood flow come to the area, lengthen it out a little bit in a therapeutic fashion. You get more oxygen and more blood flow and more nutrients and resources to the area. And this is like a therapeutic thing. This facilitates the healing. More oxygen, more glucose, more minerals and things like this, more antioxidants from your food and all of this type of stuff, that has very positive metabolic implications. That's why even if you sprain or tear something or whatever the case is, when you engage in mobility exercises and stretching and things with resistance bands, a lot of physical therapists work with resistance bands, and it's just about creating movement. It's not like a real challenge, just creating movement. And this makes your joints feel better. And as a matter of fact, with all the joint pain that I would have, one of the best things, I felt the best and had the least amount of joint pain in the middle of a training session. It was like a few hours after the training session, all the joint pain would come back, all the stiffness would come back. The stiffness is a lack of blood flow to the area. It's a lack of energy. Things are just getting shut off. It's creating the stiffness. So you got to get some oxygen and blood flow back in there to lubricate it, so to speak, right? So there are dietary implications for this, right? So when you improve your diet, you have more of a carbohydrate-rich, water-rich diet. You get more potassium, more magnesium, more manganese, more phosphorus in your diet, right? You get more vitamin D3, so you spend more time in direct sunlight and all of this type of stuff. These things start to recover your metabolism. And then when you engage in fasting creates more insulin sensitivity, helps to decongest your metabolism, decongest your liver, bring your blood sugar down, relax your kidneys, all of this type of stuff, right? Your adrenal glands kick on, and so basically your body pushes out and flushes out toxins more effectively, so your kidneys work more efficiently, and then the joint pain starts to come down as a result. So there's all these check marks and things that happen, right? So easy, consistent therapeutic movement, right? With a diet that is geared towards metabolic improvement, and then implementing some type of fasting strategy where you fast for anywhere between 24 hours or 36 hours or so. Periodic fasts throughout the week. It could be one fast, it could be 2 or 3. Typically 2 or 3 is like the sweet spot. So if you do 2, that could be like, let's say you do one on Tuesday and another one on like Saturday, or you do a fast on Tuesday, you do one on Thursday, or Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, however you do it, right? And so you implement all of these things, right? This is like the triad of human health: physical movement, diet, and fasting, right? And this applies to most people. You have to be patient with the process because you have to establish a trend, right? It's not like you just do it for a week and then everything just boom and it's fixed. You get this periodic level of progress, stepping up week after week after week, month after month. You just got to be patient with the process, right? So if you have arthritis, one of the worst things you can do is just be like, well, I'm not going to move because it's painful. Well, no, you have to move it, right? You have to unlock the joints that are in pain, right? So you got to rush some blood flow to it. So foam rolling, mobility exercises, things like this. As a matter of fact, I'm going to show you something. I'm going to show y'all some mobility exercises that I do. Let me pull this up. Hold on. Do I have this plugged in here? Can I do this? Let me see. I have daily mobility in all of my training plans because the mobility exercises, that's everything. That right there is extremely important. So let me pull this up for a second here. Hold on. Is it connected here? Do we got it? Yeah. I'm gonna go in my trusty exercise library. Yeah. All right, so here's an example. Boom. Actually, let me mute that one. All right. So this right here is how I stretch out my hamstrings and my calves. Right. Also, this is a great way to stretch out your lats, lube up your shoulders, shoulder girdle, all this type of stuff. Right. This is a great exercise to do like first thing in the morning. Okay. This is the beast to downward dog. Right, so calves, hamstrings, all that type of stuff. Right? So that's an example of one. Right, so I throw things like that in the training plans. Those are absolute game changers. Let's see if I find another really good one here. Let me see. Here we go. This is one of my favorite ones. All right. The deep lizard lunge to inchworm. So this right here, you're stretching out your glutes, glute max, your glute medius, your piriformis, your psoas, hip flexors, opening up the shoulder girdle, stretching your adductors, everything, right? And the hamstrings and the calves, and hitting your abs. Full body, right? You can get straight up out of bed first thing in the morning and do this. Right? Phenomenal stuff. Okay. So this isn't about like, stretching a muscle as much as possible to try to force your body to be more flexible. It's not really what this is. It's just simply just movement patterns that you can engage in, and you just do them in this repetitious fashion. And with each and every single rep that you do, your range of motion increases gradually. Your heart rate increases, you get more blood flow to the area, and then you get warmed up, right? You get more metabolically ramped up, right? This is also really good for your lymphatic system, right? So you optimize your lymphatic system with these torso rotations and things like that, so you can clear out toxins from your body more effectively. So you can wake up in the morning and do exercises like that. It stimulates detoxification first thing in the morning, right? You can wake up first thing in the morning, you drink your green tea, and then you do your daily mobility with exercises like that, and you feel amazing afterwards. You get that heart rate up. It's not like really difficult. It may be when you're not used to moving and things like that, right? So if you're like really immobile and you're really tight all over the place, you can do modified versions of that, but basically it's just about being patient with yourself, right? I just tried to do that inchworm stretch. I could feel it. Yeah, I'm telling you, the inchworms, you feel it in your abs and everything. And the cool thing is that the tighter your calves and your hamstrings are, the more you feel it in your abs. Right? My man James, what's going on? Good to see you in here. Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm saying, everything I'm saying right now, this applies to people 30 all the way up to like 76, right? What I'm saying is not really for like really young people. It's not what I'm talking, because I'm talking about like correcting issues, like the whole muscle building thing and maximizing for recovery. Everybody I work with primarily is like over the age of 30 at least, but typically like around 40, 45, 50 years old, right? And so one of the most common things is like osteoporosis, osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, these types of things, right? And essentially, the movement is necessary. Your diet may be solid and spot on, and you may be really good with cardio, but the mobility and the resistance training is the thing you really got to optimize for. And it's kind of difficult because people will be like, well, I'm trying to optimize for fat loss. And so when people are trying to burn fat, they work the crap out of their bodies. So it'd be like really long, extensive, intense cardio, and then doing the resistance training, and then with the calorie cutting and all this type. And it's like, it's a lot. So you got to practice more self-care and recovery and that type of thing. As you improve your metabolism, the joint pain starts to dissipate, because people typically who have like, arthritic issues, they tend to be insulin resistant, right? And struggling to drop body fat. And all of these things are indicative of metabolic issues. You have to improve your metabolism, right? So usually people like this will usually have like insulin resistance or high blood pressure or both, or some type of kidney disease or fatty liver disease, things of this nature, right? And so whether you're trying to drop body fat or reverse arthritis, it all comes down to optimizing your metabolism, staying hydrated, getting more antioxidants into your body, bringing your blood sugar down to a reasonable level, right? And expediting the process of removing toxins from your body and increasing oxygen uptake, right? So it's this stuff. And you put forth an effort. And the thing is that even if I say, hey, 1 set per exercise, this is a thing you can do at any age. And it is extremely effective regardless of what age you are. It doesn't really matter. You can be 80 years old. Doesn't matter, right? Your peak effort at 80 and your peak effort at 20 is going to yield you results, right? So this is a principle that can carry you throughout your entire life. But the thing is that reducing your training frequency and prioritizing recovery is a lot more important the older you get. Right? That's the thing you really understand. Like, young people don't really have like a great appreciation for recovery. So young people will run themselves to the bone because they can. But the thing is that when you're older, you can't really do that, because all of the abuse you put yourself through when you were younger, you pay for it when you're older. So if you need more recovery at 60, you basically got to make up for all the recovery you didn't get when you were 30, when you were 20, right? You've just been racking up hits for decades and just going, right? So you have people that battling their weight, they're battling body image and trying to get stronger. You're going through living paycheck to paycheck or grinding it out at college and paying bills and doing all this and doing that. It's a lot of stress. You take a lot of hits. Breakups, divorces, fights with your kids, family members, paying taxes. All this stuff has negative implications. It's just stressors, right? And it's hard to grow muscle and drop body fat and all of that type of stuff with poor stress management. It gets harder to do when you're older because you have to contend with more of it. You accumulate more of it. Right? And then we take something like, let's say, osteoporosis, which is typically a thing that women face when the estrogen falls off a cliff after menopause. After menopause, the cholesterol really jumps up and you get like bone degeneration, right? Because estrogen helps to regulate vascular health insulin sensitivity, and maintain heart health and bone density. Estrogen is extremely important in that regard. So when you lose that estrogen output, well, there's some side effects that come with that, all right? If your cholesterol is increasing, your body basically uses cholesterol in order to synthesize new cells. It's a substrate for new cells. So if you have a lot of inflammation, oxidative stress going on in your body will deploy more cholesterol and stem cells and things like that, basically lipoproteins, to make new cells. Right? But as you heal and the inflammation and oxidative stress comes down, the cholesterol also comes down. So, people say, oh, if you want to bring down your cholesterol, eat more healthy fats. Like what? Eat more healthy fats like avocado. Well, what is it about the avocado? Oh, it's mono and polyunsaturated fats. Okay, I thought cholesterol is made from fat. Well, yeah, but these are magical polyunsaturated fats that are healthy fats. Well, why are they healthy fats? Why are they healthy fats? Why is, coconut yogurt or hemp seeds or chia seeds or flax seeds or avocado or whatever, or fish oil, why are these healthy fats? Why? Is it the fat itself that's just a healthy fat? Or is it something else that's in the food that's beneficial, like vitamin E? Right? The healthy fats are all the fats that are rich in antioxidants, which bring down inflammation. When you bring down inflammation, your body basically responds to that and produces less of this cholesterol. Right? When your body increases cholesterol, it's doing this for a specific reason. Your body's doing this in response to chronic inflammation, or your body's doing this because your diet is very rich in fat and protein. So if your diet's very rich in fat and protein, well, then you get an abundance of amino acids and fatty acids floating around in your blood, and your body will respond to that by using those lipids and amino acids to create lipoproteins. That's what your body's supposed to do. What else is it supposed to do with the excess amino acids and lipids? It's there, it's available, make something out of it, use it. Right? So it's that. Now what's interesting too is that there is nuance about cholesterol, because high cholesterol in and of itself is not negative. So this is important to know, especially if you're a woman who's older or you're postmenopausal and things like that. It's important to know. Cholesterol or high cholesterol is a risk factor. Okay, it's not inherently problematic, it's a risk factor, right? So for example, driving to work or driving anywhere is a risk factor for dying in a car accident. Now, driving is not bad. It's not a thing you should avoid necessarily, but just understand the more you drive, the more you increase your risk of dying in a car accident. That's not an argument against driving. It's just understand that it is a risk factor. Right? Cholesterol is the same thing. Just because your cholesterol is higher or higher than you want it to does not necessarily mean that you're in the danger zone. So for example, let's say if your cholesterol is high, but your ApoB is low, and your triglycerides are low, and your blood sugar, your fasted blood sugar is like 84 or 86 or something like that, right? Well, then you're not really in the danger zone. You don't have any of the risk factors that will actually cause you to have like a stroke or a heart attack or something like that. Your blood pressure is good, your blood flow is good, your ApoB is low, all your inflammatory markers are low. Not all of them, but just the ones related to heart health, right? then it's not really a thing to be really concerned about. Now, however, if your cholesterol is real high and your blood sugar is perpetually high and you have high ApoB and you have a stiffening in your arteries and things like that, you got a degree of atherosclerosis, blood calcium is high. Whoa, you got all of them risk factors. You're a walking heart attack. You got to do something about this ASAP. It's not just about lowering your cholesterol. You got to fix all that. Right? It's that. So if you have like arthritis and high cholesterol, but like your blood sugar is good and all of that type of stuff, well then basically you have to address the other forms of inflammation that you're contending with that's jacking up your cholesterol. Right? So when people say, oh, when you have more fiber in your diet, it lowers your cholesterol. Well, how does fiber lower cholesterol? How does that work? You don't really hear too many people explain it. Well, how does increasing fiber intake lower cholesterol? It improves your blood sugar. So typically, if your blood sugar is excessively high, that can cause you to have something called hyperlipidemia, which is excess blood fat. So your blood sugar is real high and your blood fats are also high, right? Because you're eating dietary fat and it's accumulating in your bloodstream. You're also eating, carbs, things like that, and that's accumulating in your bloodstream. So they're both accumulating in your bloodstream, therefore you have hyperlipidemia and you're hyperglycemic. All right? So more dietary fiber, it slows down the rate that glucose enters into your bloodstream, and that helps to bring down blood sugar, right? And so now when you bring down the blood sugar, that helps to decongest your bloodstream, and over time, the blood fat saturation can also come down. It's a traffic regulation mechanism, right? Now, that's not a magic bullet, because a lot of times that doesn't work, right? Because if you have a lot of fat in your diet, and you have a lot of carbs in your diet, but you also have a lot of fiber in your diet, fiber just slows down the gastric emptying. But the hyperlipidemia, if it's not caused by, fast gastric emptying, it's not really your problem. It's not going to fix it. So it's circumstantial in that way. That's why you have to know what the cause is of the thing, because hyperlipidemia is not all caused by the same thing. However, if you got like high cholesterol, it's like, well, are you eating eggs every morning, like 3-4 eggs every morning with cheese? Yes. Are you cooking with oil? Yes. Are you eating like chicken and beef and fish and whatever? Yes. Okay, well, that's why. You keep injecting all types of like saturated fat and stuff like that into your diet. You have a high fat, high protein diet, so you're getting more of those amino acids and lipids accumulating in your bloodstream. And if the estrogen is not there to regulate it, to act as a buffer, to make sure it's not going crazy, well, there's just nothing inhibiting the increase in the accumulation. And the interesting thing is, as you get older, your need to eat as much decreases, because you're not really going to grow any taller, right? You're not doing a whole lot of growth. Like if you're 50, 60, 70 years old, you ain't doing a whole lot of growth. You're not eating to get big, so all of this eating is unnecessary, especially if you have a metabolic disorder. You keep eating every day. It's not necessary. Your body doesn't need as much, and your body can't really tolerate as much, right? You're not like a growing young person where they're going to increase in shoe size and stuff. It's not happening, right? So people largely overestimate how much they need to eat, and this becomes a problem because people overestimate, like, oh, I got to eat 3 meals a day, 4 meals a day, every day. Well, not really. No, you don't. If you're underweight, yeah, sure, maybe. If you're trying to gain weight, yeah, that would help. But if you're not trying to gain weight and all this type of stuff, it's not really necessary. So there's a bit of nuance with these types of things, right? When it comes to building bone, you have the outer layer of your bone. Bone, bone tissue, things like that. I'm gonna simplify it. Outer layer, inner layer, right? And your bones are like the scaffolding for your body, for your stature. But your bones are also like a reservoir to store minerals. Like you store a lot of your vitamins and minerals inside your bones. You also store like stem cells and things like that inside your bones, in your bone marrow, right? So a lot of the minerals and things that you eat, that stuff gets into your skeletal muscle tissue and your bone, but a lot of it gets stored inside your bone marrow. And it gets stored inside your bone marrow like throughout your whole entire life. So your whole life, you're accumulating these minerals and things like that inside, amino acids, things like that inside your bone tissue. And those nutrients can get deployed from your bone tissue in certain circumstances, but can also go into your bone tissue in certain circumstances. So you have osteoclast and osteoblast. Osteoclast is when those resources are exiting. Osteoblast is when they're entering, right? If you have a diet that is rich in magnesium, you have a diet that is rich in manganese, you have a diet that is rich in phosphorus, these things work. And this is just a few, there's more than that. But these are some of the primary drivers of facilitating the strengthening of bone tissue, right? And then you have your valine, leucine, isoleucine, cysteine, methionine, these types of things. And then you have a variety of B vitamins, like pantothenic acid and things like that. All your B vitamins, they work together, thiamine, and all of these things work together to shuttle nutrients inside your cells. Really lock it down. All of these things come from alkalizing foods. Alkalizing foods are foods that are rich in the 5 alkalizing minerals: calcium, potassium, magnesium, manganese, iron. Right? When your diet is rich in those things, that is like one of the major things that you need in order to reverse rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis, any kind of degenerative bone disease, sarcopenia, all of that, right? If the environment inside your gut and inside your bloodstream is acidic, there's an overaccumulation of metabolites, waste products, and things like that, there will be minerals that get deployed, or just nutrients in general, that get deployed from your bone tissue and into your bloodstream or into your gut to neutralize the acid. Mainly into your bloodstream, to neutralize the acid. I'll give you an example. Acid reflux, or GERD, or gout. This is basically just acid accumulation. And so you can take like an antacid, and it's usually something like calcium bicarbonate or something like that, because calcium is a primary alkalizer. So if there's an overaccumulation of acid, and your stomach is supposed to be very acidic, but you can have like a real accumulation of acid inside your gut, and that can rise up into your lower esophagus, right? And that can really burn, really uncomfortable, and it can like really tear up your esophageal lining. So the calcium can be used to neutralize that. Calcium is primarily used to neutralize that if there's a deficiency, typically in things like magnesium and potassium. If you go with a deficiency of magnesium and potassium, right, and manganese, things like this over a prolonged period of time, you start leaching more calcium out of your bone tissue. This can contribute to the degradation of bone tissue and then lead to the deterioration of connective tissue, right? If you have more of an alkaline diet and lifestyle and you improve your metabolic health, you can reverse that whole process. Right? So everything that I've been talking about in the stream, the training, the resistance training incentivizes your body to adapt so that when you eat, those materials get rushed to your skeletal muscle, your bone, connective tissues, and helps to rebuild and reinforce that infrastructure. Right? So the training is a metabolic therapy, because if you train and then eat, your body's going to be way more efficient with what you eat than it normally would, right? It enhances the flow of nutrients into your cells. That's what the resistance training does. It's the reason why it's so closely related to things like improving your health and dropping body fat, losing weight, and all that type of stuff. It's because it optimizes the flow of nutrients to your cells. Also, training clears waste products out of your body. So when you train, you pump your lymphatic system, you ramp up your adrenal function, and this wakes up your kidneys, and you push toxins out much more efficiently than normal. Right? So the resistance training, basically, number one, it is detoxifying, and number two, it optimizes the transport of vital nutrients to your cells. And that has an antioxidant effect, meaning it reduces oxidative stress. Of course, this is a dose-dependent thing, meaning you do too much exercise, it doesn't really have that effect. It can even have the opposite effect because you did too much. So there has to be an adequate dosage of exercise. Right? You don't need a whole lot of it. You just need enough to create a response. That's it. When you train, you just want to create a particular response and then stop. You don't want to create the response and you keep doing it. Right? Because now it's chronic and then it becomes inflammatory, and then the more you sustain it, the more inflammatory it becomes. When you have pain, joint pain issues related to arthritis and things like this, you may feel like, oh, I feel pain in my bones, or I feel pain in my joints. I don't know, it's like a sharp pain. You may feel sharp pains, you may feel numbness, tingling, things like this. What that is acid crystallizing inside your connective tissues. So when you're like, oh, it feels like pins and needles. Yeah, it's literally acid crystallizing inside your connective tissue. A great example of this is gout. Gout essentially is an overaccumulation of uric acid. Now, normally that uric acid is regulated by your liver and your kidneys, right? But it's mainly neutralized and liquefied and then passed through your kidneys, right? When you consume fat, uric acid increases. When you consume protein, uric acid increases, right? But when you have more potassium, when you have more vitamin C, when you have more magnesium in your diet, things like this, more malic acid, the uric acid comes down, right? You get more blood plasma, you get more water flowing through your lymphatic system, and your body is able to excrete that uric acid. But if you're having an acidic diet, you're lacking those alkalizing minerals, you're engaging in a lot of lifestyle stress, things like this, you're overdoing it with the exercise, you're getting dehydrated. Dehydration, by the way, is one of the primary drivers of that. As the uric acid increases, uric acid acts as a risk factor, right? So the increase in uric acid is risk factor number one. Calcium being leached from your muscle and bone tissue and entering your bloodstream, raising blood calcium, that's risk factor number two. Excess protein in the diet, you get an increase in methionine and cysteine, that's risk factor number three, right? And hyperlipidemia and which you get this increased cholesterol, that's risk factor number four. And these things work and they combine together, and this is how you get things like gallstones, kidney stones, you get the crystallization of acid inside your connective tissues, and that's where you get pain. All right. It's almost like the joint pain is like a stroke in the joint, in the connective tissues rather than your brain. That's kind of what it is. So when you have more of an alkalizing diet, and fasting also is alkalizing, because in a fasted state, your blood sugar drops and your body therefore optimizes oxygen absorption and fat conversion over to glucose, right? And as that happens, as long as you stay hydrated, that will help to break up the stone formation, the crystals and things like that, and also reduce the excess amino acid saturation inside your blood. By the way, this is something that you really gotta take note of if you're dealing with kidney issues, where your creatinine's high, BUN is high, that type of thing. By the way, really elevated creatinine is a sign of chronic inflammation. Okay, chronic inflammation and the overconsumption of protein. You get high creatinine. So a lot of times what happens is when people have high creatinine, they also have high BUN, which is blood urine nitrogen. Okay. All right. Let me catch up with y'all in the comments here. Also, why like my comments and stuff white and blue? Where my green at? Oh, let me see about that. Where my green at? Question. 3 question marks. What's the percentage of your daily veggies? Like around 5-7 ounces. Typically towards the end of the day. Like tonight gonna be one of them nights with them veggies. That's right. We got Mama Do in the building. That's my Mama Do. What you said? What did Steven say? He didn't say that. He said every other day, rest in between for recovery and muscle growth. What did Steven say? Steven! Ali, facts, my dad had to get a hip replacement at 50. He was in the military, didn't have time for recovery, paid for it later. Oh yeah, they run you. Man, in the military, they run you. By the way, folks, like the stream if you like the stream. I gotta say that. Well, let me see if I can bring my green back. Where my thing at? Hold on. StreamYard messing with my colors. They wouldn't change everything to like this blue. And I like blue. But let me get my green back. Hold on. I'm not gonna mess around with that too much. I'm gonna have to mess with this later. They done mess with my green. I had this beautiful green color. I don't know how to get it back. I'm upset. Oh, y'all done mess with my green. It's a beautiful green. Man, they messed with my green. I'm upset. It was green, the corners were rounded. I don't want that. Why am I in a square? What's this about? All right, well, I'm not gonna, oh, is it the bubble thing? So this is my ADD kicking in where I'm messing with the colors and all that type of stuff. I don't want to be doing all of that. All right, let me stop. Are you familiar with Dr. Doug McGruff? Body by Science. Body by Science, maybe? Kind of, may sound a little familiar. That's not the green I had last time, but close enough. I'm gonna have to mess with that at another time. I'm not gonna. Tell me about Doug, Dr. Doug McGruff. I kind of like the name Doug. Like, everybody who I've ever met in my life named Doug were pretty cool people. Oh, this is the face. Big sip. Is that from the last stream? Was that like a Saturday stream I did with the face? With that emoji? I love that. With the eyes far apart, with the lips in between. I love that. I don't know why, I get a kick out of that. Yeah, so I have for tribe members, right? I got Tribe Flex and Tribe Solid. I'm gonna be putting up Tribe Strength in the next few days as well. My Tribe Flex program is all body weight resistance bands, where basically you can train from anywhere. It's all body weight resistance band stuff. Very minimal on the training volume, but really intense, 20 to 30 minute workouts. It's been one of the most effective things I've ever done. Tribe Solid is basically with the implementation of barbell and dumbbell exercises. So if you want to go to the gym, you want to do your back squat and your barbell deadlifts, you want to lift more weights, things like that. And just bringing that up actually made me remember what else I wanted to address. The tribe solid is for that, right? Because people who are gym rats, they're like, man, I got to be in the gym. I got to be in the environment, and there's certain dumbbell. Because there are like barbells and dumbbells. So, for example, let me talk about this. The barbell lifts, the dumbbell lifts, primarily the barbell lifts, right? So, like a back squat. If you do a barbell back squat, one of the biggest benefits is that it creates a compressive load. Okay? So it creates a compressive load, which then presses down on your body and compresses the discs in your spine. It smashes down on you, right? The weight. So you put a couple 100 pounds on your back and that thing is smashing down on you the whole set. So you have to breathe and brace and get a really rigid, strong core so that you don't collapse under the bar, right? So you don't get stapled, right? So you don't shrimp up under the bar and become a meme on the internet. Because, you go to work out in the gym and people put their camera phone out. So if you do something crazy, you take a spill, you're going to be on the internet. I'm just playing. I don't know, baby. I don't know, because I go on the internet. I'm seeing people getting stapled on the barbells all the time, all these mishaps. But anyway, so a movement like that creates a compressive load, and your body responds to that compressive load by creating more space in between your discs and hydrating your discs, and your discs are like a gelatinous disc, like a pillow in between your vertebrae, provides space. And so your body will fill those discs with more fluid to create more space in between your vertebrae. And then your vertebrae will actually become more dense, they become harder. So the actual bone and the molecular structure of the bone becomes like steel, becomes like stone. It becomes real rock hard because that weight smashing down on you is like a trauma, and your body responds to that by reinforcing the bone. So your vertebrae becomes stronger and more dense, right? Harder bones. And that's an adaptation to a compressive load, okay? Then there's movements like a deadlift. A deadlift, basically, you take weight and you pick it up off the ground, right? So the movement starts in a lengthened position, right? So you get down to the bottom, you get a nice tight grip, you lock in your grip, you get real tense. Breathe in and brace. Push that chest out, bring the shoulders back, neutral neck, and let her rip. Squeezing them glutes hard, contracting them lats, get everything real tight, right? And this creates a tensile load, okay? A tensile load improves your bone's ability to bend without breaking. It's a different adaptation, all right? So let's say you are like, man, I want to be like a stone golem. I want to be bone man or bone woman, right? I want to have bones like lead beams. So you can do back squats, and that can improve your bone's ability to deal with a compressive load, right? So you can do overhead presses, bench presses, back squats, and that improves your body's ability to combat a compressive load. Farmer's carries, compressive load, right? And then you can create a tensile load. You can improve your body's ability to handle tensile loads with front squats, deadlifts, right, and things of that nature. Basically, a tensile load is usually where the weight is going to be out in front of you or something like that. It's going to be away from your midline at some point, pulling away from you. And so there's going to be an exaggeration of the lever arms, kind of technical stuff. But basically, the more a weight gets out from you, the more of a tensile load is required for you to not get hurt, right? So the weight's not smashing down on you, right? So it's not this thing where it's pushing you down into the ground. It's a different that you're pulling against it, right? So that requires more tensile strength. So the bone can bend without breaking. Okay. Now you can be very well adapted to a compressive load, but not to a tensile load. And you can also be very well adapted to tensile loads, but not compressive loads. Okay. So you could train for both. So like those squats and deadlifts, great way to do it. Can you improve on a compressive load using resistance bands? Yes, but not to the degree like you can with a barbell and doing a back squat. However, if you want to optimize for an adaptation to a compressive load, there's gonna be some risk involved with that. Okay? Because in order to create that compressive load, you gotta have that weight smashing down on you. That's physical contact with a force really acting on you, smashing down. All right? So your form has got to be really on point. You got to be really disciplined with how much weight you use and how you scale things up and all that type of stuff. And when you're dealing with a compressive load, your ability to do max effort is going to be a little constrained because your form has got to be tight. If your form gets sloppy, you're more likely you're gonna have some problems. You're gonna get hurt. All right? Same thing with a tensile load. I mean, the more you push the tensile load, you get something snap. You get a snap or a pop. Right? So you gotta be a little methodical with it. Right? So you take your time. You practice patience. You don't ego lift. And you're in it for the long term, because in order to adapt and strengthen your bones, this is more of a long-term project, right? You ain't gonna just be growing all kind of thick-ass, hard, bendable bones in a very short period of time. It don't work like that, right? Skeletal muscle grows the quickest, and then everything else kind of takes a lot longer, right? However, the resistance bands, you can strengthen the bone by proxy, because as you strengthen and grow the muscle, the bone also becomes stronger. So skeletal muscle makes up like 50% of your total lean mass. So whatever your lean mass is, your fat-free mass, about like 50% of that is like skeletal muscle mass. As you increase your skeletal muscle mass, that would also, by proxy, increase your other vital organs, particularly connective tissues like ligaments and tendons and bone. Right? You can grow your lungs and your heart and things like that. You don't really want like a larger liver and lungs. you don't want to do that, right? But you can add a little bit more periodically, more bone as your muscle mass grows. Of course, there's an amount to how much muscle mass you can gain, because you do have a genetic ceiling, and that genetic ceiling serves as a protection, because if you gain too much muscle mass, it can actually have a very negative effect on your body. Right? That's why large dogs live shorter lives, and the little dogs live the longest. Being big, and if you're gonna be real big, you're not gonna live that long. Right? So take your time getting to your genetic ceiling, and you hold and maintain, and you stay in it for the long haul, and practice patience. Colleen, a textbook type of anatomy, physiology model, actually doing the exercise would be helpful as you explain. That is true. Can I find a video of the barbell lifts? I can. I'm probably gonna have to do that in a separate video if I really want to dive into details with that. I'll make a video specifically about the compressive and tensile load. Use me in an official fashion. What do you mean by that? I don't quite know what you mean by that. So you gotta elaborate a little bit. Cali girl, what's going on? That's right. That's right. Hit me up in the Discord. Give me an update. Let me know how you're doing. My man, Tyler T. What's going on, brother? Good to see you in here. All right. I appreciate that. All right, y'all. I think I covered everything I wanted to cover tonight. So yeah, I will be back on for the Thursday night live for those of you who are in the tribe. All right. I know I went over a lot of stuff today. If you're trying to improve your joint health, reverse arthritis, and all of that type of stuff, you're trying to improve your metabolic health, all this type of stuff is right in my wheelhouse. All you need is patience and discipline to follow the plan and the approach, right? And you get compounding gains. You can hit the link in the description box of this video. You can book a call with me, or you can join the 12-week mentorship, right? And take part in the courses that are up, and I'll be adding to those modules and whatnot. It's a growing platform. But yeah, the courses are up. We go over diet planning, fasting, training, and then the Thursday night lives, we do the group calls and all of that type of stuff, right? So a lot of dope things coming to the platform and all that. So I'm not gonna hold y'all for too long. I've been on for quite long. It's almost 2 hours, so we'll leave it there, and I'll catch you on the next live stream. Have a good night, y'all.